A question that comes up is, how do I recompose my shot for a different aspect ratio? In this case, this was composed for standard 4:3 aspect ratio, which is sort of what you could think of as the native aspect ratio for 12 field animation paper. That is a less common aspect ratio nowadays. Usually you would use what is called 16:9 or 16:9 aspect ratio, which is approximately the same as standard motion picture 177 aspect ratio. On HD televisions, they're all now oriented towards 16:9, so it's a wider screen shape. The 4:3 is a little more squarish. So let me show you. This is very, very simple. You've got your original source file here. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to go to the File menu, New Project. And in our new project, we're going to create a project HDTV 1080p. That's 1920 by 1080. And there we go. And you can tell by comparing the screen size, this is more squarish, 16:9 is wider. So again, we know that our scene is 34 frames long, so I'm just going to drag that out to 34 frames and name this scene A5, funny camera move, 16:9. Oh, okay, I made a little mistake there. I'll show you what I didn't do. I didn't save what I wrote in. So, scene A5, funny camera move, 16:9, and then hit return. And so that's named our layer. I still need to save and name the project. So we'll call that the same thing. Scene A5, camera move, 16:9. Just name it anything that you can remember it or find it by, something that's appropriate, and then save it in a folder where you can find it. Now we're going to go to the effects stack again, and that you remember is the little magic hat, because the effects is where the magic happens. We're going to add an effect, a single effect, and ours is in the motion menu, and it's the KeyFramer. So now we're back here in the KeyFramer. You remember, of course, how to set a keyframe. You hit the little key icon, and that sets a keyframe. Hit it again, and that deletes the keyframe. So now we need a source, which is our scene over here. So we go to the Source tab, and from the project list, we choose this as our source. Turn the preview on, and now you can see we're looking through our virtual camera, and we're seeing beyond it to the source. The source layer, we can move around anywhere within that size, anywhere inside the source layer. If you wanted, you could start the camera up high over here, and the camera could pan down to the rabbit. In this case, we're going to set it up for our same camera move. But this time, notice we're in 16:9 resolution, or 16:9 aspect ratio. I keep saying resolution, but I mean aspect ratio. The resolution would be the 1080 pixels. Alright, so there's our start position so far. I'm going to now switch back over to the position tab, and I am going to go in a little bit closer to start, and I'm going to move over, maybe not quite that far. So there's my start position. So before I do anything, I need to set the keyframe. That's the start on frame 1. Advance to the end. Just as I showed you in the other one, if the camera were simply to follow the rabbit in a straight line with no change of camera position otherwise, it could do that. It could just stay the same field and follow the camera, or follow the rabbit down as it hops forward. But we are going to actually go out. So I want to adjust that and pull that down, go out a little bit more. And so now with the 16:9 aspect ratio composition, this is how it's going to look as the rabbit moves forward and the camera pulls out. Same thing around here, the midpoint, I want the camera to be up just a little bit higher, and as before, switch that to smooth mode. So now when I have that move, it's going to be a curve that I can adjust. It can either be a large curve or just a subtle curve. In this case, it is going to be just a subtle curve. So the camera stays more or less centered as it follows the rabbit hopping forward. You can see over here these numbers changing as it moves from keyframe to keyframe. Don't forget one more thing you can do after you have set these points for the camera move is to go in to the speed profile, which you enable by clicking there and then double click on it to bring it up. The speed profile curve gives you a little more control over how the move starts and stops. So switch it to spline mode and set a point near the beginning so you get a curve into the move and a point near the end so it curves into the last point. This is going to be the equivalent of a slow in and a slow out. It's a little hard to see it here on the preview, but it actually does add a subtle bit of cushion on either end. So that's something that you usually will want to do. And this profile speed curve can have an effect on the move if you start in fast and end slow. It's going to look different. Again, it may be hard to see here in the preview, but this setting it like this is going to make it accelerate very fast near the beginning and then slow out at the end. You could do the opposite where it slows in and then accelerates and then slows out. So as a rule, a basic camera move like this, just use a slight slow in at the beginning and slow out at the end. So when you're happy with the move, you've previewed it by scrubbing along the timeline like this, and that's the move you want. Remember, you have to right click on the timeline on the layer and select all. All the frames are selected. You're going to apply on the current layer to the selection, and in this case, apply to the frames. So now to render our camera move, hit Apply Effect Stack. Then you can close out the effect stack, and here is the finished camera move. Now at 16:9 aspect ratio. So you can see how simple that is. You can recompose the shot to make it work within a 16:9 aspect ratio, even if your original source file was composed for 4:3. You're really only limited by how large the original artwork is, how much you can move around inside the space. If you needed it to be wider, you would just have to paint or draw the background larger so that you've got more area to move around inside. But within this little scene, which is just of the rabbit just hopping forward, we've got plenty of room to recompose the scene in this aspect ratio. Then you just export it as usual and upload it to your class.